arriving and does not require effort. It happens on its own, often before we realize it has begun. There is no clear moment when the body decides to rest. Instead, attention slowly loosens, like a hand that has been holding something for a long time and finally forgets why it was holding on. In this space, nothing needs to be adjusted. The pace is already slow enough. As the day fades into background quiet, the mind does not need instructions. Thoughts may still appear, drifting in and out without direction. They are not interruptions. They are simply part of settling. Even when the mind wanders, it is still moving toward ease, guided by a rhythm older than intention. This movement happens naturally, without being noticed. Here, calm is not something new to learn. It is something familiar that returns when pressure lifts. Muscles soften slightly. Breathing finds a steadier shape. Awareness widens just enough that nothing feels urgent anymore. There is no task hidden beneath this moment, no outcome waiting ahead. Everything that matters is already allowed to slow. You may notice small sensations coming forward as larger ones fade. The weight of the body resting, the gentle pull of gravity, the quiet continuity of breath moving in and out. These are not signals to focus harder. They are reminders that the body already understands how to rest. Attention can follow them lightly, or not at all. Nothing in this moment asks to be understood. Patterns are not yet visible, and they do not need to be. Order does not announce itself. It arrives softly, often while awareness is elsewhere. When nothing is demanded, subtle agreements begin to form beneath the surface. They are not planned. They simply happen. If thoughts return to unfinished pieces of the day, they can pass without engagement. There is no need to complete them now. Completion is not required here. The quiet you are entering does not depend on resolution. It depends only on allowing things to remain unfinished. This gentle beginning is not leading anywhere specific. It is simply creating space. Space where motion can slow. Space where attention no longer needs to decide. As this openness settles, something steady continues quietly in the background. We will notice it again later. But for now, it is enough to rest inside the feeling that nothing needs attention. When attention begins to rest, it does not happen all at once. It eases, the way evening light softens without announcing the moment it changes. There is no signal to follow, no instruction to obey. Awareness simply finds fewer reasons to stay sharp, and in that absence, it starts to drift on its own. Breathing continues without needing to be managed. Each inhale arrives when it is ready. Each exhale leaves when it no longer needs to stay. The body does not rush this exchange. It already knows the pace that feels safe. As breathing settles, the mind often follows, not because it is told to, but because there is nothing left to respond to. Thoughts may still appear lightly and without order. They are not signs of restlessness. They are signs of unwinding. Like objects placed down after being carried too long, they land gently and then lose importance. There is no need to trace where they came from or where they go. They can move through without taking attention with them. As the senses soften, small details become easier to ignore. Sounds blend into a single background presence. Sensations overlap instead of standing apart. The edges between one moment and the next grow thinner. Nothing needs to be sorted or labeled. The experience becomes less about noticing and more about allowing. In this state, effort quietly steps aside. The body does not wait for permission to relax. It releases in stages, sometimes without awareness at all. Muscles loosen, not dramatically, but enough to feel less held. The weight of the body becomes more apparent, as if gravity itself is offering support. There is no finish line here. Rest does not arrive as a destination. It unfolds as a gradual absence of urgency. The mind may briefly check for something to do, then find nothing pressing and let go again. This continues quietly, without needing confirmation. Earlier calm does not disappear. It deepens by staying simple. Nothing new is introduced. Nothing needs to be remembered. The same gentle conditions repeat, reinforcing themselves through familiarity rather than force. The body recognizes this repetition and responds by sinking further into ease. If attention drifts away entirely, that is not a loss. It is a sign that awareness no longer needs to monitor itself. The quiet you are moving into does not require witnesses. It remains steady, even when the mind steps back. We will notice this again later, but for now, it is enough to let attention rest wherever it naturally settles. There is a quiet comfort in repetition that often goes unnoticed. Simple motions return again and again without asking to be observed. Breathing repeats. Light shifts. Sounds settle into familiar patterns. Nothing new is required for this rhythm to continue. It is enough that the same movements occur, gently, without variation. Repetition is not meant to inform. It is meant to soothe. When the mind senses familiarity, it loosens its grip on alertness. Attention no longer scans for change, because change is not expected. This soft predictability allows awareness to rest more deeply. Here, repetition does not feel like sameness. It feels like reassurance. Each return confirms that nothing has shifted abruptly. The environment remains safe, steady, and permissive. Small cycles continue quietly beneath conscious thought. We rarely notice how much calm depends on these cycles. They form a background that supports rest without explanation. As repetition continues, the need to interpret fades. Meaning becomes less important than continuity. The mind begins to trust what is happening simply because it keeps happening. This trust does not require certainty. It grows from consistency alone. Patterns begin to suggest themselves, not as ideas, but as feelings. A sense that things are aligning, even if no one is directing them. Nothing is resolved here. There is no final shape to recognize. The repetition does not lead toward a conclusion. It remains open, extending forward without urgency. This continues quietly, reinforcing itself through presence rather than progress. Earlier calm returns again, now more settled than before. The same softness repeats, deepening familiarity. Each cycle makes the next easier to accept. Attention may drift away and return without disruption. The rhythm does not depend on being noticed. It persists, whether awareness follows it or not. This persistence creates a gentle sense of order. Not an order that organizes, but one that allows. The body responds by relaxing further into what feels known. Nothing needs to be named to be understood here. The repetition carries meaning only by continuing. We will notice this again later, in a wider way. For now, it is enough to remain inside the repeating quiet. The mind is free to soften its edges. The night continues without interruption. Calm holds its place without effort. The repetition remains, steady and patient, waiting without expectation. It does not hurry the moment forward, and it does not pull it back. It simply stays, offering the same gentle signal of safety. Nothing changes suddenly, and nothing needs to. Rest deepens by returning again and again to what already feels familiar. That return remains open unfinished, and quietly ongoing inside. Small motions rarely announce themselves. They occur quietly, almost beneath notice, adjusting without asking for attention. A shift in posture, a subtle change in breath, a sound that blends into the background. Each movement is minor on its own, yet together they begin to lean toward one another. When these motions repeat, they start to share a direction, not a goal, but a tendency. They soften at similar moments. They pause together. Over time, this shared timing creates a sense of agreement. Nothing is instructed to align. It happens because staying separate takes more effort than easing closer. Alignment does not feel like order arriving. It feels like friction leaving. The body senses this before the mind does. Muscles release slightly more. Breathing finds a smoother rhythm. Awareness stops checking for interruption. The change is not dramatic enough to track, and that is what makes it effective. As these small motions settle, they influence one another gently. One ease invites another. Stillness spreads without pressure. The process does not move forward in steps. It drifts, lingering where comfort is already present. No moment declares itself complete. Earlier calm remains present, now carrying more weight. It supports these adjustments without needing reinforcement. The same quiet conditions continue, allowing alignment to deepen gradually. Nothing is fixed in place. Everything remains flexible, responsive, and unfinished. This is not balance as a final state. It is balance as an ongoing conversation between movements that no longer compete. They adapt by listening, not by changing. The absence of urgency allows this listening to continue quietly. Sometimes awareness may briefly notice this alignment forming, a sense that things are fitting together without effort. That noticing does not need to last. Even when attention drifts away again, the process continues on its own. It does not rely on observation. The environment participates as well. Sounds soften. The space feels more settled. The boundary between one sensation and the next grows less distinct. Alignment spreads by proximity, not instruction. Nothing here needs to be understood. Causes remain undefined. Effects are gentle enough to feel familiar rather than new. The motion toward agreement does not end. It simply slows, becoming part of the background. This continues quietly, reinforcing itself through ease. Earlier softness returns again, slightly deeper each time. The mind does not need to track how this happens. It is enough to feel that small motions no longer pull apart. They rest closer now, sharing space without effort. We will notice this again later, from a wider distance. For now, alignment remains subtle, ongoing, and open, allowing rest to deepen without asking for attention or explanation. Time rarely feels active when it is working most gently. It does not push or direct. It simply remains, allowing moments to soften at their own pace. When nothing is urgent, time stops feeling like a measure and begins to feel like a presence. It stays without asking to be noticed. In this presence, changes happen slowly enough to avoid detection. Edges blur. Transitions stretch. What once felt separate begins to overlap. There is no signal that something has shifted, only a growing sense that movement has lost its sharpness. Earlier calm continues quietly beneath everything. Patterns often emerge this way, not because they are created, but because time gives them room. Repetition settles into familiarity. Small variations smooth themselves out. The longer this continues, the less effort is required to remain steady. We rarely recognize time's role in this because it leaves no trace of intention. Nothing here is moving toward completion. Time does not collect moments to arrive somewhere. It allows them to pass without direction. This openness removes pressure from change itself. Without pressure, adjustment becomes easier, almost inevitable. The body responds naturally to this ease. Breathing deepens slightly. Muscles soften in stages. Awareness widens and then drifts. These responses are not decisions. They are quiet agreements between time and rest, repeating without announcement. Earlier softness remains present, now stretched across a wider span. The same calm conditions return again and again, reinforced by patience rather than force. This continuity does not demand attention. It supports rest even when awareness steps back. As time continues to hold space, order feels less like an arrangement and more like an allowance. Things fall into place simply because nothing interrupts them. There is no moment where balance is achieved. It keeps adjusting, gently, without needing correction. This continues quietly, extending forward without urgency. We will notice this again later, when the perspective widens further. For now, it is enough to feel how time supports calm by staying neutral, present, and unhurried. Nothing ends here. Nothing begins. The process remains open, carried softly by time itself. It does not hurry silence or slow it down. Silence arrives when ready and leaves without explanation. Time does not watch this exchange. It simply allows it. In that allowance, rest feels protected. There is space for drifting, space for forgetting, space for sleep to deepen without being guided. This gentle holding continues quietly, steady, and patient, giving calm permission to remain unfinished. No outcome is required. The moment is free to extend. Time remains nearby, neither leading nor following, present enough to support rest while staying out of the way. This openness stays with you. Nothing presses forward. Calm continues quietly. It remains gentle, open, and unclaimed. Rest deepens on its own, without effort. Order does not always arrive through planning. Sometimes it forms when nothing interferes. In quiet conditions, structures appear without instruction, held together by ease rather than design. This kind of order does not announce itself. It settles gradually, often while attention is elsewhere. When effort steps aside, relationships between small elements begin to stabilize. Movements find paths that require less strain. Pauses lengthen naturally. The system does not decide to become organized. It simply follows what feels smoother, repeating what costs less energy. This does not resolve into a final arrangement. The order remains flexible, adjusting as conditions shift. What feels stable now can soften later without disruption. Because nothing was forced into place, nothing resists change. The structure holds lightly. Earlier calm continues quietly beneath this process. Familiar softness returns, supporting these adjustments without needing reinforcement. The same gentle environment allows patterns to persist while staying open. Nothing sharpens. Nothing demands definition. It can feel as though something invisible is guiding the process, yet nothing is directing it. Balance emerges as a side effect of patience. When time is allowed to pass without pressure, interactions settle into agreement. We will notice this again later, from a broader view. The mind does not need to understand how this happens. Explanation would only narrow what remains wide. It is enough to sense that things are no longer competing. Motions share space without urgency. Stillness and movement coexist without conflict. As order holds without effort, awareness often drifts further back. Sounds blend. Sensations overlap. The boundary between one moment and the next loosens. This is not loss of attention. It is attention no longer being needed. The body responds by resting into what feels dependable. Breathing remains steady. Muscles soften incrementally. There is no signal that says rest has arrived. The absence of effort simply continues. This continues quietly, without requiring confirmation. The structure that forms does not need to be protected. It remains because it can, not because it must. Nothing here asks to be finished. Earlier calm remains present, unchanged, and supportive. The same conditions repeat, allowing order to stay gentle. The process does not conclude. It lingers, open and adaptable, carrying rest forward without instruction. The night holds this lightly, and the quiet remains ongoing. It does not hurry understanding, and it does not slow drifting. Curiosity softens into comfort without being answered. The same ease circles back, familiar and reassuring. If attention fades completely, the process remains. Order stays gentle, patient, and unfinished, continuing quietly, while sleep deepens, unobserved and unrequired. Nothing presses forward, and nothing pulls away. Earlier calm supports this stillness again. We will notice this again later, or not at all. Either way, the quiet continues, open and steady, allowing rest to remain without direction. No outcomes arrive. The night stays wide, patient, and ongoing. Stepping back does not require distance. It happens when attention loosens its focus and allows the surrounding quiet to widen on its own. What once felt close and specific begins to feel broader, as if the same calm has more room to move. Nothing new appears. The space simply opens. Earlier softness remains present, now less defined. It no longer belongs to any single sensation or moment. Instead, it stretches gently across everything, connecting what came before with what continues now. This widening does not explain anything. It only changes how things are held. From this perspective, patterns feel less important to follow. They are still there, continuing quietly, but they no longer ask to be traced. Awareness does not need to stay near them. It can rest at a distance, trusting that nothing requires supervision. The calm does not weaken when attention steps back. It becomes steadier. Sounds, sensations, and thoughts blend more easily here. Boundaries soften. One experience flows into the next without clear separation. The mind may sense this blending briefly, then drift again. There is no need to keep noticing. The process remains stable without observation. Earlier moments echo faintly, not as memories, but as familiarity. The same ease repeats, now spread wider. What felt like alignment before now feels like continuity. Nothing is forming. Nothing is dissolving. Everything is simply allowed to remain. This wider quiet reduces the need to check for meaning. Questions lose their edges. Curiosity no longer pushes forward. It settles back into comfort, content to stay unresolved. We will notice this again later, when the quiet opens even further. The body responds to this openness without effort. Breathing stays slow. Muscles remain loose. The sense of weight feels supported rather than heavy. These sensations do not demand attention. They exist quietly, reinforcing the same calm conditions. Time feels less noticeable here. Moments stretch without being counted. There is no sense of moving toward anything. The night holds its shape without urgency. Earlier calm continues quietly, unchanged by the widening view. Nothing needs to be gathered or summarized. This is not a pause before something else. It is a settling into what already exists. The space feels large enough to hold drifting awareness without pulling it back. As perspective remains wide, attention may fade entirely. That fading does not interrupt anything. The quiet does not depend on being held in mind. It remains steady on its own. This continues quietly, open and unfinished. The calm does not narrow again. It stays broad, patient, and supportive. There is no signal to move closer. There is no need to return. The night remains wide, and rest deepens within that width, without instruction, without conclusion, and without being noticed. Noticing begins to fade before anything else does. Attention no longer follows what is happening, and nothing asks it to return. Patterns continue, but they do so without witnesses. The mind does not track them. It does not need to. The quiet remains complete, even when awareness loosens its hold. Earlier calm is still present, though it is harder to locate. It is no longer attached to sensation or thought. It exists more as a background condition, steady and unchanging. The absence of noticing does not weaken it. In fact, the calm feels more reliable when it no longer depends on being observed. Here, the effort to stay aware gently dissolves. There is no need to remember what came before. The sequence of moments becomes less distinct. One blends into the next without markers. This blending feels safe, almost familiar, as if it has happened many times before. Sounds soften further, losing their edges. Sensations become less specific. Even the sense of having a body grows quieter, less defined. Nothing disappears abruptly. Everything simply becomes less important to track. The mind releases detail without resistance. Earlier ideas do not return as thoughts. They remain only as a sense of continuity. What was aligning, widening, and settling continues quietly, though it no longer feels like a process. It feels like a condition that holds everything gently in place. This is not a loss of control. Control is no longer required. The mind does not fall away. It steps aside. Rest does not need guidance here. It deepens naturally in the absence of monitoring. The night feels steady, unchanged by attention drifting away. Time continues without being measured. There is no sense of before or after. Only the ongoing presence of quiet remains. We will notice this again later, though noticing is no longer necessary. Reassurance comes from sameness rather than awareness. The same calm conditions repeat without variation. Nothing interrupts them. Nothing introduces urgency. The environment remains supportive without comment. As noticing fades further, curiosity softens into comfort. There is no question waiting to be answered. No meaning needs to be resolved. The openness itself becomes reassuring, wide enough to hold drifting awareness without pulling it back. This continues quietly, uninterrupted by thought or attention. Calm does not announce itself. It simply remains. The mind is free to rest without keeping track. Sleep deepens within this quiet continuity, protected by the absence of noticing, held gently by what does not need to be seen. Structure does not vanish all at once. It loosens gradually, like a shape softening at the edges until it no longer needs to hold itself together. What once felt arranged now feels open. Not empty, but free of definition. The quiet that has been present all along begins to spread without form. Earlier calm remains, though it no longer feels like something beneath awareness. It feels everywhere at once, without direction or center. The sense of order does not disappear. It simply stops presenting itself as something separate. There is no boundary between structure and rest. As distinctions fade, attention has less to attach to. Sensations no longer stand apart from one another. Thoughts lose their outlines before fully forming. The mind does not resist this. There is nothing to hold on to, and nothing asks to be held. This dissolving is gentle. Nothing collapses. Nothing breaks. The process unfolds without motion, more like a release than a change. Earlier patterns continue quietly, but they no longer feel like patterns. They feel like continuity, uninterrupted and smooth. The body remains supported in this openness. Breathing stays steady without being noticed. Weight feels evenly distributed, no longer pressing or pulling. The sense of position becomes less specific. There is comfort in not needing to locate oneself. Time stretches here without shape. Moments blend together, losing their edges. There is no sense of moving forward or backward. The night holds everything without emphasis. Earlier calm does not deepen or fade. It simply remains. Nothing new is introduced. There is no need for understanding. The absence of structure does not create uncertainty. It creates relief. Without form, there is nothing to adjust. Without direction, there is nothing to anticipate. Awareness may drift in and out without consequence. Whether it stays present or fades completely, the quiet remains unchanged. It does not depend on attention. It does not respond to it. This steadiness becomes reassuring. We will notice this again later, though noticing is no longer required. The openness holds itself. It does not need confirmation. The same conditions repeat softly, uninterrupted. As structure dissolves further, even the idea of dissolving becomes unnecessary. There is no process to follow anymore. Only a wide, even stillness remains. This continues quietly, without conclusion. Nothing signals an ending. Nothing asks to begin again. The calm stays open, patient, and unclaimed. Rest deepens naturally within this openness, carried by a quiet that does not form, does not resolve, and does not ask to be noticed. Nothing needs to gather itself here. There is no shape to return to, no thread to follow back. What remains is not an ending, but a continuation so even that it no longer feels like movement. Quiet does not hold attention anymore. It holds everything else gently, without asking. Earlier calm has not changed. It has simply become indistinguishable from the space around it. There is no inside or outside to notice. Rest no longer arrives in stages. It is already present, wide and steady, without needing reinforcement. Awareness may appear briefly, then soften again. It does not interrupt anything when it fades. The quiet does not depend on being recognized. It remains stable whether the mind is present or not. Nothing adjusts when attention drifts away. Time feels open here, without direction. Moments no longer connect into sequences. They overlap softly, losing the need to be ordered. There is no sense of waiting. Nothing feels unfinished, because nothing expects completion. The body continues its gentle rhythms without instruction. Breathing stays slow and natural. Muscles remain loose, supported by stillness rather than effort. Even the sense of weight feels evenly held. Comfort exists without being noticed. Curiosity has fully softened into ease. There is no question left to hold. Meaning does not need to resolve. The openness itself is enough. It does not invite thought. It allows rest. Nothing signals that this moment should change. Nothing encourages it to remain the same. It simply continues quietly, balanced and unclaimed. The night holds this without emphasis. There is no final understanding to reach, no summary to form. What has been unfolding remains open, wide, and ongoing. The calm does not narrow again. It stays as it is, without edges. Sleep deepens here, without being guided. Awareness is free to fade completely. The quiet does not follow or lead. It remains steady and patient, long after attention lets go. Nothing ends. Nothing begins. The experience stays unfinished, continuous, and safe. Rest continues quietly, held by a stillness that does not resolve, does not conclude, and does not ask to be remembered.